Hello everyone and welcome back to One Soccer. I am your host for today, Josh Deming, and I am joined by my co-host, Alex Gonge-Ruzic. Alex, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Pleasure as always to chat, but in a new location together.
I know.
It's unbelievable.
Virtual relationships can never work. We had to meet in public and we had to meet in person. We have in this gorgeous, look at this, like incredible job, new studio, very excited. A lot of different little elements going on here, as you guys probably saw from the intro. Very excited to get going. But for today's video, Alex, the World Cup is coming up. It's fast approaching, and with the World Cup coming up, it's worth noting that this is probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for several players to get potentially a move or just to kind of break out in their own. And today we're going to come up with 5 Canadians on the Canadian men's national team, and we're going to come up with a potential transfer that they could earn by having a solid World Cup. We're going to talk about what they need to do to get that done in the different clubs and how they could potentially fit. So, Alex, you ready to get going?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to start off with the youngster. And I think this is a very interesting player to touch on because it's Ismael Kone. Ismael Kone broke out this season, and I think that's a bit of an understatement to see just the leaps and bounds he's kind of grew as a player from CF Montreal and becoming a starter with a very talented Major League Soccer club, and also probably Canada. There's a really good chance I think that he could potentially start a couple matches and if not have a big influence on Canada. So to start things off, let's kind of take a look at where, if he has a good World Cup, where he could potentially go. Where do you see him fitting in if he earns a big move after this World Cup?
Yeah, I mean, Ismael Kone, certainly it feels like the sky is starting to be the limit with Ismael Kone, with how much he's grown in this first year as a professional. Just 19, less than a year ago, he wasn't even in CF Montreal. He was playing amateur soccer in Montreal. Just a phenomenal rise to get to where he is. So I think with him, if he just needs to continue his rise, and if he has a good performance at the World Cup, the team I have him earmarked for is Marseille.
Okay.
So I say Ligue 1 because Ismael Kone is somebody who speaks French. Obviously, he grew up, in Montreal. He plays for CF Montreal. I think adjusting to Ligue 1 would obviously help him from that regard. And then in terms of the league, I mean, it's Ligue 1. It's one of the top 5 leagues in the world. We've seen how he's able to. I feel like he could really suit the styles and the levels of the league. It's a league that's technical but also physical, and I think he fits really both of those attributes very well. Very technically gifted, but a player that can handle the rigors of MLS, as he's shown. I think Ligue 1 will benefit him, and I think it helps that there's been some Canadian connection to Ligue 1. We see how much Jonathan David has adapted to playing in Ligue 1. He's someone who's francophone who came up through Ottawa. I think there's a lot of parallels there that could make Marseille the place for Ismael Kone.
And I think it's worth noting that Gerson is potentially rumored to leave in January, so that could be a bit of an opening. I like the idea as well. My answer is going to be a little bit more basic because we've seen these links before. You talk about a profile that John Herman said he's never really seen before. You just how technically gifted and how raw of a talent Ismael Kone is. But he was linked to somewhere in the last window, and he was linked to Sheffield United. And I like this team a lot for different reasons. I mean, they're top of the championship right now at time of recording. Sandro Berga is potentially going to leave, which is a big reason why I think Ismael Kone didn't end up making that transfer, is the fact that he stayed. He should be playing, in my eyes, a top 5 league. So if he does leave, there's an opening there for Ismael Kone to come in January after hopefully having a big World Cup. They play that 3-5-2 system, which means that there's different options in the midfield, gives him an ability to potentially get a start right away if Berger obviously leaves. If not, he comes in and just kind of learns the ranks and potentially starts over in the next season. But the big question is, if he's going to get either one of these moves, how is he going to do it? What do you think Ismael Kone has to do at this World Cup to potentially get that look and get one of these 2 transfers?
Yeah, well, it's huge because what we have to remember about the World Cup, and it's kind of almost the premise of this video, is that the World Cup can be a launching pad. It can be an opening to markets you don't even know. It's like, in business terms, it's like a convention. Like all the eyes on you, everyone's in the market. It's an expo, even if we want to go, because obviously Canada has a rich histories of expos in the past. So for Ismael Kone, he has to just go out there and prove that there's more than just potential. Because I think ultimately, if we're talking at the market, potential can get you so much value, can get you so far. You have to show that some of it's real. So I think he has to go out, prove that, yeah, he's 19, but there's a reason why he's looked like a 26-year-old all year for Montreal. You have to show that even if you're out there on the field against, Kevin De Bruyne is against Belgium, Luka Modric is against Croatia, Achraf Hakimi is against Morocco, that Ismael Kone is just going to keep being Ismael Kone and keep playing his game. He's going to have no nerves. He's not going to be frazzled. I think that's what's going to make the difference between a 19-year-old, wonder kid who maybe gets sold for a couple millions and, an explosion that he will want to have at this World Cup.
Yeah, maturity is definitely the answer, I think, that to go with. But I want to kind of add to that a little bit. I really think that this opportunity for Ismael Kone to have a successful World Cup is going to start with the Bahrain match. I think the fact that Jonathan Osorio, we don't exactly know right now what he's going to be like, if he's going to be fully fit or not, but I think he'll be battling with Osorio for those minutes. If he's able to impress in Bahrain, potentially then lead into the Japan match and then the World Cup, I think it starts at the beginning and doing this type of things that you said. Influence the match the way that he was able to with CF Montreal, play with the big boys and do it one step at a time. Bahrain to Japan to the World Cup. If he's able to prove that, I think there's no doubt about it that looking at a young 20-year-old with the potential that he could grow into, there's going to be some interest for sure. Speaking of CF Montreal players, Ismael Kone is not the only one on our list. The next one is Alistair Johnston, and this is a player I think has been flirting with the potential of going to Europe for some time now, and I think this is the opportunity for him to do that. Alex, when you're taking a look at Alistair Johnston and the incredible career he's already had in Major League Soccer with Nashville and now CF Montreal, is it time? And if so, where do you think he could fit in Europe?
Yeah, I think Alistair Johnston certainly has probably done his time in MLS through 3 seasons. Now he's grown so much as a player. He came in as a fresh-faced rookie who was a midfielder. Now he's become one of the best wingbacks, fullbacks in MLS, can play center back, as we know, obviously, for Canada. So for him, I have the move Burnley, and this is a bit of an interesting one, but I just have the UK pegged as he has Northern Irish passport. It always helps, always tough to get work permits in England, and I think he's really suited for the English game, but specifically within England, I have the Championship. The Premier League's always a big jump, and you don't want to thrust in that environment right away, but I think with a club like Burnley, who's kind of on the upper echelon of the Championship, he can push up. They play modern soccer now under Vincent Kompany. They hold onto the ball, but they still want to defend well. Alistair Johnston ticks a lot of those boxes. He was excellent in a CF Montreal system where he had to hold on to the ball a lot. He had to, be patient in possession, but also defend a lot in transition. I think with Burnley, he'd do that. So there's a lot of fits there, and there'd be a potentially an opening there as a natural right back. Might not be a wing back with Burnley. They play more of a 4-3-3, but I think he can suit into that role very easily.
They really like their defensive football, so there's a potential there for him to really develop his game even further on the defensive side. But for myself, again, not going with the most creative. I think this is a unique one because Bologna and Serie A are owned obviously by CF Montreal. This is a direct link from Major League Soccer to a top 5 league. Bologna right now have really turned their season around. They're looking good. They play that 3-4-2-1 system, and the thing I like about that is it gives Alistair Johnston opportunity. He can play as a right wing back, which he mainly featured for CF Montreal, outside right center back, which is where I really like to see him play for Canada. So it's just that link that I think is there. I think like you mentioned, like the UK passport could get him some more chances that way, but just the fact that there's a direct link to Europe, I'd really like to see. And I actually think that it could be a good league for him. You've seen a lot of North Americans already going over there. Weston McKennie is doing well. Serginho Dest just went over there. There's potential, so we'll have to wait and see. But if he's going to make this type of move happen, whether it's Bologna or somewhere else in Burnley or the UK, wherever it may be, if he's going to earn himself a big move, what does he have to do at the World Cup to achieve it?
Oh man, I think for Alistair Johnston at the World Cup, he just needs to have some big defensive moments. Because the thing is with Alistair Johnston, what's allowed him to shine for Canada is that he's been unafraid of the spotlight. I think that's tough as a defender because you get thrust in and you have to defend Christian Pulisic, you have to defend Hirving Lozano, and he did such a good job of that in CONCACAF. He went up against Pulisic at Tim Hortons Field in January against the US, and he pocketed him basically. He made him a non-factor. He had some fantastic 1v1s. You look at Hirving Lozano at the Ice Tech. Alistair Johnston did a great job as well, but for him there's also some concerns because Darwin Nunez, up and coming forward, a bit more of a different profile, a physical profile. Alistair Johnston maybe struggled a bit with in the Uruguay friendly that Canada recently has, whereas against speedier wingers like Pulisic and Lozano he did better. So I think for him, he just needs to have some standout 1v1 defensive moments, go up against an Eden Hazard, go up against a Lovren Mayer from Croatia, some of these talented wide players like a Hakim Ziyech on Morocco. Maybe that can be a kind of cerebral player that Johnston can shut down and prove that when it comes to 1v1 defending, he's one of the best in CONCACAF, and just needs to show it on the world stage to show that teams that they can trust him defensively.
Yeah, on the pitch, always important, but the one thing that I think Alistair Johnston has a big opportunity to capitalize on is the off-the-pitch type. The way he acts, the way he interacts with different people is fantastic. He is such a personality, such a character, someone that I think when a club's looking like they want that presence in the locker room. And you've seen it. Just had an excellent commercial come out with Jarinko. He's got that personality, he's got that smile, and I think that he can be a real leader as well. It doesn't only carry into his personality and his life in general, but on the pitch, you see how much he wants it. You see that he can help his team in different type of ways that doesn't actually have to really focus on just the game itself. It's more than that. It's being a leader, and I think that he's got an opportunity to really step up in that back line right now and show that, hey, this is a personality that I would love in my locker room. It's one that I think after maybe using the media side of things, this is a good player, this is a great player, let's get him involved. And that smile, I mean, just
irresistible.
Now we talked about the Major League Soccer players. We're going to transition a little bit to someone who is established in Europe, and in my opinion, it's a player who could really use a transfer. It's Samuel Adekugbe. He had a fantastic season with Hatayspor in the Turkish League last campaign. This one's been a little rocky so far. He's kind of lost his way, but he is playing still. But I think this is really an opportunity for him to show that I'm ready for that step. Come January, come sign me. Alex, when you're looking at Adekugbe, where he could potentially fit and what clubs, if he has a successful World Cup, could take a look at him, who do you got in mind?
Well, he's been the great example of just linear progression and the developmental pathway. Started at the Whitecaps, went to Norway with Vålerenga, now at Hatayspor. So I think the next step up, it's a top 5 league. He's in his prime, mid to late 20s. I have Eintracht Frankfurt, solid club in Germany. Obviously won Europa League last year. They're always competing in the Champions League, but you look, they play a very modern, 3 at the back system. Their current left wing back, Luca Pellegrini, on loan from Juventus. So maybe an opening there for Sam Adekugbe. He's great in that wing back role because he can cover so much ground. What's remarkable about him as a wing back is he rarely has less than a 6 or a 7 out of 10 of a game. He's so consistent. I think that is what coaches are going to love, especially at the top level where you have to be on every game. So I think for him, Eintracht Frankfurt, a club of that sort of level, club pushing for Europe, a good club maybe even pushing for a title one day. I think Adekugbe, he could do well to that's the next step after where he's done in Turkey and in Norway, etc.
Yeah, I love it. I love the wingback role because if you look at his season at Hatayspor, even this season where he hasn't really been at his best, but neither's Hatayspor, he usually gets between 70 to 90 touches. He has the ball all the time. I think if you give him the opportunity because he plays in a back four with Hatayspor, to go up into a wingback role, that's where he's going to find success. I would love to see him at Frankfurt, but that was your pick. So I had another team in mind, and that's Stuttgart. It's a team a little bit further down the table, but it's a historic German club, though. I think they'll have a good chance of staying up. They are in the playoff relegation spot right now, but the reason that club came to mind is because it's in the Bundesliga, it's a top 5 league, and Sosa, who's their current left wing back, has been rumored to leave in January. So, I mean, they're going to play each other actually at the World Cup, Canada-Croatia. So if Adekugbe can impress that way, maybe Stuttgart gets some big bucks coming in and they can find a decent signing of Adekugbe come in and replace coming off a good performance. But that's where we're going to steer into next. What is it going to take for Adekugbe to get that type of look at a top 5 league? What is he going to have to do to potentially get that type of opportunity?
The thing is with Adekugbe, he has a very good baseline. I mentioned he's very consistent. He rarely has less than a 6 out of 7 game, which is great. But what also he has that I think could be the difference is that he also has a 9 out of 10 game or a 10 out of 10 game in his back pocket. And when he was at his best during qualifying, he showed that he was capable of shouldering the load in some games. We think of, at home in Edmonton against Costa Rica, where he was everywhere. He was building out the back. He was making runs. He was, almost led the team in touches. He was dribbling. He was doing, roulettes on the field. He was dominant. It was a field with Alphonso Davies, a Champions League winner, a field with Jonathan David. Atiba Hutchinson came on the field. Stefan Eustáquio was playing, and Sam Adekugbe was the guy that stood out and was dominant, was changing the course of the game, and he's done that. You look at the U.S., at Tim Hortons Field where he scored that goal, and he was just everywhere. He was in the final third creating chances. He was defending. He can take over a game, and I think if you're going to go to a top 5 league, that ability just to dominate, to be a game breaker, they're going to love that. If he can have one of those games, say, against a Croatia where he just goes out and is dominant, that's going to be a huge boost for him.
And I want to build on that Costa Rica point because Samuel Adekugbe's been around the national team for a while. He's an established player, but I've watched him. I'm impressed with his game, and all of a sudden, come that Costa Rica match in Edmonton, I was like, is that Davies? It was incredible the amount of time that everything was going through him that game, and this attacking flair. He did it on both sides, helped him keep a clean sheet. We picked up a scrappy 1-0 win, but regardless, he was creating everything through there, having the ability to go up, get in the attack, know when to track back. It was a performance that I think if you do this on the biggest of stage, and that's a World Cup performance, that will get a lot of attention. Similar from a Stuttgart to a Frankfurt, maybe teams in England as well. it's the sky's the limit if you put in a type of performance like that in the World Cup. And like you even mentioned, he did it as well. This isn't just a one-off. He did it with the United States. That is the type of performance he's going to have to get. And if he does, there's going to come teams knocking. Speaking of another player who is ready for a top 5 move, we are focusing on Tajon Buchanan. His story is a little bit different from the players we've mentioned so far because he just made this move less than a year ago to Club Brugge for $7 million. He's basically, when healthy, been a starter for them, and he's going into the round of 16 right now. So he's got a good at club level, but there's that James Rodriguez effect that we're going to touch on here, and it's the fact that if you remember back a long time ago when Rodriguez moved from Porto to Monaco, he moved there for a big chunk of change when that money started coming Monaco's way, had a fantastic season for them, led into the World Cup for, Colombia, he was incredible. He was incredible through the entire thing, scored 6 goals, and then he got that monster move. So he's only at Monaco for a year, similar to Buchanan. Once the January transfer window is over, or it's up, he's going to be there for a year. And if he's able to impress at the World Cup, that opportunity to maybe make a similar type of move could be there. Alex, if he's going to make that move to a top 5 league, what club and what league comes to mind for you?
Yeah, well, I think Tajon Buchanan brings such a unique profile to the table as a winger, a guy who can take guys 1v1. He's explosive. He's always got this moment of magic, but he's very defensively responsible. He's also physically capable of taking on tough defenders and tough assignments. So I think because of that, that screams the Premier League. And specifically, I'm going to go Newcastle. The new money club is running up the table right now, currently 3rd as of recording in the Premier League. They've been magical this season. They haven't really done it with traditional wingers. Obviously, Miguel Almiron's been excellent, but on the left side, it's been a bit of a rotation. Obviously, Alan St. Maximin is there. He's always been great, but he's coming off the bench these days. Joelinton's played on the wing, but he's better in the middle these days. You got Jacob Murphy as well, who's played there. I think they could use another spark plug like a Miguel Almiron, and that's what Tajon Buchanan is. He can go in there and have that magic, but he's also physically capable of handling the Premier League. I think he's defensively responsible, that a coach can put him in and trust him and know that he'll do a job there on the wing on both sides of the ball. So I think because of that, Tajon Buchanan, the Premier League, it feels like a perfect match.
It could be a good fit, but I have a tendency to go back to the Bundesliga because I really do believe it's a great landing spot for North American players. It's proven. Davies is example A. You have Pulisic there, you have Gio, you have Weston, and I'm hoping to see Tajon there. The club I'm looking at right now, who I'm kind of talking about these Americans as well, is RB Leipzig. Now, they are not from just because it's a marketing standpoint, but they've obviously capitalized on a lot of Americans going there. They haven't really tapped into the Canadian market. This is a huge potential for them to take a look at what Buchanan does at the biggest level and be like, yes, that's a perfect addition to this side. And not only that, it's a perfect off the field, it would be a perfect one on the field. Marco Rosa has taken over RB Leipzig, and he's trying to put his new way of playing into the RB way, which is a kind of a 4-2-3-1 system. And they have Emil Forsberg, who's been kind of forced out to play a little wide. They don't really have those traditional wingers where if he could play as a left attacking mid, right attacking mid, that'd be a perfect fit. They've also been playing in that back 3, which requires wing backs, which is where he'd be very useful. And then the RB way, which we've seen a lot, is just kind of like that 4-4-2. And again, that's right wing back, right mid, and right wing, or on the left-hand side. Perfect opportunity there for Buchanan. I think he'd be a real fit in the Bundesliga, but that's a big step. He is playing Champions League, which is, you can't understate that. He's doing very well at Club Brugge, a very solid league in Belgium. But if he's going to make this type of jump, Alex, what does he have to do at the World Cup to get that type of attention?
Well, I kind of mentioned he has a moment of magic in him, and it's true. Like in his boots, he has fireworks. He just has this ability to explode at these moments with moments of magic. We've seen it for Canada. His first ever game in a Canadian shirt, U23 qualifiers, went out and scored a magical brace. Just dancing around defenders, slides it in. He brings the backflip too, just for good measure, almost just to taunt the opponents. Like, I just did that to you. And then he showed it again at the Gold Cup, one of his first camps with the senior national team against Mexico. Your team needs a goal, and he just goes out, step over into the corner. Like, he's got the ears plugged celebration. You just remember those goals. Even the last example I have off the top of my head is El Salvador at home. Canada's missing Alphonso Davies. He's injured. Jonathan David was maybe struggling a bit to start World Cup qualifiers. You don't have a win. You're at home. You need to win. And Tajon Buchanan just kind of went and took the team on his back. He scored this He ends up assisting Jonathan David for the second goal in a 3-0 win, and ends up scoring the third himself. Magical goal, if you remember. A couple step overs, put it through the goalkeeper's legs, backflip just for good measure. He has these moments of magic that you don't forget. He does his thing. It's magical. It's explosive. It's fireworks, and then he just goes and celebrates. And I think sometimes at a World Cup, if you're an attacker, you need those memorable plays. You need to go and just have a goal like that. If it's against a Belgium, a Croatia, Morocco, people are going to remember that, especially if it's flair. He dances, he brings a backflip, and I think for an attacker like him, he's so solid defensively. We know those sorts of things. He's a very solid player, but I think if he's going to want to catch the eye of some of those bigger leagues, he has to show that magic that he has, because teams are always going to love players who have that potential.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on how many games Canada play, I know that, I'm hoping, but I also think I know that Buchanan will have some special moments because he's just that type of player. But I want to see that sprinkled into a complete tournament. I want every single game he plays to do what he does, be consistent, because that is what top 5 leagues look at. You need to be a player who can, like you mentioned, do it on both sides. Have Buchanan everywhere. Have him defending, have him attacking, have him creating, having him doing everything he can. So when you look at the tournament, kind of like the way I'm hoping he has a tournament, anything like Arjen Robben's tournament for the Netherlands when they had that incredible run. Robben was incredible. He had his special moments as always, as you remember that one goal against Iker Casillas, which was breathtaking. But other than that, he was a rock star the entire tournament. I think if Tajon can put together a complete package sprinkled in with some really impressive performances and individual magic, I think that will potentially go a long way into getting him one of those moves. Moving on to a player who we know is going to get that big move. We just don't know when. It's Jonathan David. He's been a revelation in terms of Canadian soccer. Another fantastic story of someone just growing throughout the European adventure he's had in Belgium to Lille, and now he's probably ready for that big top 5 move. We just don't know exactly where it is. He went to Lille for 30 million. The price tag's around 50 right now. There's a few leagues that come to mind that could potentially be a fit for him. But Alex, if Jonathan David is going to impress at the World Cup and get a move, would you like to see him go, or where do you think he could potentially go?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to think that someone who's a Ligue 1 champion, who's scored as many goals as he have, could be looking for a move upwards. So for that, it shows it's going to be to the upper echelon. And the club eventually I settled on is AC Milan. They're making a bit of a resurgence, just like the mid-2000s again. They're doing well in the Champions League. They're doing well in Serie A. And I just I look at the system, the way they play very fluid in the front line. Sometimes Olivier Giroud's leading the line, sometimes Divock Origi. I think they could use a bit of an upgrade. So you look at some of the guys like Rafael Leao, Brahim Diaz, and some of this attacking talent that AC Milan has. I think Jonathan David could be the sort of striker that can allow them to take the next step. He's very versatile. We know that he's not your typical number 9. He's very unique. He can play between the lines. He can drop deep. He can score with both feet. He has that bit of flair, a bit of patience you don't typically see from number 9s, but he can also score first touch. I think with all that, he could be a perfect guy to kind of lead the line for AC Milan and bring some of these talented attackers that they have together and help them make that next step as they have been to be a regular Champions League contender again.
I think it's worth noting, too, that he spent all season playing in a 4-2-3-1 system, getting very used to that. That's what AC Milan has basically played all of this season and the previous season, where they went on to become the Scudetto champions. And further along, I like this fact that, Ibra's 41, Giroud's 35. At some point, they're going to have to find a younger striker, and I think David would be a big upgrade to Origi. So I really like that shout, but I've decided to go with, I don't know if it's controversial. There's always those links there, but I went with Manchester United because when I'm looking at, not that AC Milan couldn't lead him to potentially starting right away, but I think that deep down, I think he's got his eye on the Prem. And when I'm looking at one of the teams, because he's recently been linked to Tottenham, to Everton, to Arsenal, when I'm looking at a potential landing spot where he's going to start, I have to imagine it could be United, mainly because, Rashford can always play on the wing when need be. Martial's had bad injuries. That's been keeping out for a while. Ronaldo situation, especially if he leaves in January, that opening could be there for Jonathan David to come in. Again, in that 4-2-3-1 system, this kind of new United, I think, is a lot more intriguing to see if he would go there as opposed to the United that we thought we were going to see after the first few games this season. So it's a big move, and it's a lot of pressure, and that's the one thing I don't know how much I like, but some talented players thrive under pressure, and if David is going to get that move, he's going to have to thrive under pressure at the World Cup. So, Alex, whether it's AC Milan or whoever it could potentially be, any of the big 6 in the Premier League, if he's going to get this big move, because this would be a big move to this caliber club, what will he have to do with the World Cup to achieve it?
For Jonathan David, we know he has some big goals in him. We've seen him do it for club. We've seen it for country. But unfortunately, some of these slumps he's had has also maybe impacted that. Like, he's someone who's scored 35 plus goals across 3 seasons. That's consistently hitting double digits in a top 5 league. He's helped his team become a Liga champion. He scored in the Champions League when his team got that far. But then people remember those 10, 15 game droughts. Those are the droughts that remember. So I think he just needs some big game moments again at the World Cup to show again he has that in him. For Canada, I think he needs to go out and score some equalizers or a winner or an opening goal. Specifically, I think he needs to score Canada's first goal. All eyes are going to be on Canada. They want, a lot of people are going to be watching Canada because of Alphonso Davies. They know who Alphonso Davies is. Not as many people know about Jonathan David. Some are obviously starting to hear him, but not everyone's keeping an eye on Liga and what's Jonathan David up to. For anyone who watches Canada, it wouldn't be surprising to see him score Canada's first goal. I'd probably put my money on it happy, but he needs to go out and make it happen. When people are looking at Alphonso Davies or looking at Canada, he goes out and has a big moment like that, or he scores a huge goal against a Croatia, say it's a 1-1 game or a 0-0 game, he scores a big goal. Those are the sorts of goals that scouts are going to remember, especially with strikers. It's always going to come down to goals and moments. Jonathan David has it in him. He needs to find it in that World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, my answer is going to be straightforward. He needs to be probably in the top 10 to top 5 in scoring, and even if Canada gets bounced out in the group stage, which we are hoping they don't, you'd be surprising to see how actually few players score goals at the World Cup. I mean, like back in 2010, I know that there was a 3-way tie on only 5 goals for the league, for the most in the tournament. I mean, James Rodriguez only made it to the quarterfinals. He had 6. There's not a massive amount of goals. I think the record's 9. So even if Jonathan David scored 3 goals in group stage in 3 games, 2 goals or so, that's like the bare minimum. I bet you that's the top 10. If he's able to squeeze out 4, it's probably top 5. That is realistic. I mean, whether Canada doesn't make it out of the group, they can score goals. Jonathan David needs to prove it. Getting the first goal for Canada would be insane. Just so many eyes would be on it. Whatever player is going to pick that up, it would be huge if David can do it and build that confidence and maybe get 3-4 goals. That will put him right up there in the charts, and that will just simply get attention because you can't look away from the top scoring race. It's that simple. Performances obviously needs to be there as well, but if he's able to get it done on paper, it's going to get a lot of attention. So that brings us to the end of the 5 players who we believe are going to get, or hopefully going to get, big moves. Let us know down in the comment section if you agree. If there's any other players that you think have the massive potential, maybe Kyle Larin, Richie Larea, whoever it may be. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and we'll see you guys soon. Cheers, friends.